Incredible but true. Ferrari has just executed one of the most radical moves in recent years in the middle of the Formula One season, and it's done so with none other than its two stars, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. On the Jeddah circuit, where speed is everything, Ferrari has decided to go all out. Massive change of power units in both SF25s. What's going on inside F1's most legendary team? It all started on Friday night in Jeddah. Scuderia Ferrari, without warning, unleashed a storm in the paddock by announcing that it would almost completely change the power units of its two cars, those of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. 5 key components were replaced: the internal combustion engine, the turbocharger, the MGU-H, the MGU-K, and the exhaust system. In short, a completely revamped powertrain. And we're not talking about a simple upgrade. It was a massive, high-risk replacement just 5 races into the championship. Why is this move so significant? Because it's extremely rare to see this level of intervention so early in the season. Most teams choose to retain their first engines as much as possible to avoid penalties in the second half of the championship. However, Ferrari has decided to break that pattern, and it did so without hesitation. The most surprising thing is that, despite the massive change, there will be no penalties. The FIA confirmed that both drivers were using only their second unit of each component, within the regulatory limit. However, this move considerably reduces the margin for maneuver for the rest of the season. From now on, any further changes could come at a very high price on the grid. Meanwhile, in the Ferrari garage, the tension was palpable. The mechanics worked against the clock throughout Friday night. According to Mark Jean, the modifications were completed around 1 a.m. in a millimetric operation that left no room for error. It wasn't just about fitting a new engine, but about making it work perfectly on one of the fastest circuits on the calendar, where 80% of the lap is covered with the throttle fully open. But here comes the critical part. This decision could hide more than meets the eye. Is it an offensive move to gain an immediate advantage or a desperate attempt to cover up an underlying problem that Ferrari refuses to publicly admit? Some analysts point to a possible weakness in the original units. Others believe Ferrari had an engine development in the works that needed a clear track to unleash its true potential, and Jeddah, with its high power requirements, was the ideal testing ground. Whatever the case, what Ferrari has done is unusual. It sends a strong message to the rest of the grid. They are willing to take risks that other teams don't even dare to consider. And in such a competitive championship, that can be the difference between winning races or watching the title slip away race after race. Ferrari's move has generated a flurry of theories, analysis, and speculation. Are we witnessing a tactical masterstroke or a desperate reaction to a season start that doesn't live up to expectations? The question is legitimate because changing almost the entire powertrain so early in the calendar raises very serious questions. What really motivated Ferrari? The official explanation is simple: maximize performance on a circuit that demands everything from the engine. Jeddah, with its long straights, high-speed corners, and limited braking zones, is an extreme challenge for any power unit. In this context, Ferrari reportedly decided this was the perfect opportunity to unleash the full potential of a new set of components designed for peak conditions. But behind this narrative lies a much more delicate possibility: that Ferrari lacked confidence in the reliability of its initial engines. The first races of the season showed inconsistent performance, and rumors began to circulate. Some media outlets reported higher than expected internal temperatures, while others pointed to accelerated turbocharger degradation. Neither of these reports was officially confirmed, but the decision to change everything so quickly seems to support those suspicions. Another hypothesis that has gained traction is that Ferrari not only replaced components due to wear, but also introduced a new specification. A secret evolution, designed to be tested under real-life race conditions rather than on a test bench. If true, this would imply that Ferrari has been quietly working for weeks on an improved version of its power unit, capable of closing the gap with Red Bull and Mercedes. And amidst all this, there is an element of long-term strategy. Because while the change doesn't carry penalties now, it does reduce the safety cushion for later. Each driver has a limited number of engines, turbos, and hybrid systems they can use without penalty. And by already using the second unit, any future failure could force them to use a third, with the resulting grid penalty. In other words, Ferrari is running the risk of mortgaging its future options in exchange for immediate results. This approach also suggests a change in philosophy. For years, Ferrari was a conservative team, preferring to maintain reliability even at the expense of performance. But now, under Fred Vasseur's direction, there seems to be a more aggressive mindset. An approach that prioritizes impact on the track, even if it means living on the edge of the technical and strategic regulations. The question remains, is Ferrari showing absolute confidence in its new technical package, or did it simply have no other option? Are we seeing a revitalized Ferrari, pushing hard to return to the top, or a team already starting to make decisions on the verge of panic? The only certain thing for now is that the margin for error has been drastically reduced. Any mistake from here on out could be very costly. The season is long, the championship is open, and the cards Ferrari has put on the table leave no room for half measures. Now everyone is watching. Everyone is waiting to see if this was a stroke of genius in advance or a strategic error of gigantic proportions. Lewis Hamilton didn't come to Ferrari simply as another driver. His signing was a media earthquake, a declaration of intent by the Italian team to regain its championship status. But what many didn't expect was that 5 races into the season, the 7-time world champion would be mired in one of the toughest learning curves of his career. And that, at Ferrari, weighs even more heavily. Since first getting into the SF25, Hamilton has made it clear that the car doesn't suit his driving style. Unlike the cars he was used to at Mercedes, this Ferrari requires a deeper technical and mental adaptation. In his own words, trying to get to grips with this car in a single lap is something I'm finding very difficult. That phrase, spoken after qualifying in which he barely managed 7th place, sums up the mood of a driver who doesn't usually show his weaknesses in public. The contrast with Charles Leclerc is even more evident. Leclerc has grown within the Ferrari structure, and his aggressive style, which allows for better control of the rear of the car in oversteer situations, seems perfectly suited to the characteristics of the SF25. Hamilton, on the other hand, has had to completely change his approach. He's not comfortable, and it shows on every lap, in every qualifying attempt, in every contact with the car. There are other factors complicating his adaptation. Hamilton is using a completely new braking system, different from the one he used at Mercedes. These small, seemingly minor technical details make a huge difference when it comes to finding the optimal braking point, managing the compound's temperature, and achieving stability in the fastest corners. Leclerc, with years of experience within the Ferrari ecosystem, has assimilated this. Hamilton is still discovering it. Added to this is the overall context of the team. Ferrari is not experiencing a period of calm. Strategic decisions, technical changes, and media pressure for immediate results create an environment where there is little room for adaptation. Hamilton must not only understand a new car, but also navigate a different team culture, with a different philosophy than the one he had for more than a decade at Mercedes. Despite everything, there are signs that internal confidence has not been lost. The team continues to work closely with him, making specific adjustments to improve communication between driver and car. But time is running out. Ferrari needs points, it needs podiums, it needs wins. And every race in which Hamilton isn't in top form is a missed opportunity in a championship where every detail counts. In this context, the massive power unit change may have a hidden objective: to provide Hamilton with a more stable platform with greater power and responsiveness that will help him regain the pace that made him a 7-time champion. It will give him the tools to close the gap with Leclerc and return to competing on equal terms. But if that gamble doesn't work, the question will become even bigger. Is it a matter of time, or a total incompatibility between driver and car? Can Hamilton adapt before Ferrari decides to focus all its resources on Leclerc? And if he doesn't manage to do so soon, how will this affect his legacy, his motivation, and his presence in the most demanding team in world motorsport? Ferrari has bet on an icon, but even the greatest need the right conditions to shine. The question now is whether Ferrari will know how to provide them in time, or if this will be one of the greatest challenges of Hamilton's career. While the spotlight was on the radical engine change, Ferrari was also moving another key piece in its technical chess game: aerodynamics. On a circuit like Jeddah, where aerodynamic efficiency can mean the difference between victory and retirement, the Scuderia arrived with a package of updates designed to squeeze every last kilometer per hour out of the SF25. The most visible modification was the rear wing. Ferrari presented a version completely adapted to the Saudi Arabian track, flatter, with a reduced profile and a shorter chord on the upper flap. This type of design seeks one very specific thing: reducing drag. In other words, sacrificing some vertical grip in corners in exchange for greater straight-line speed. On a circuit where most of the lap is covered with the pedal to the metal, this compromise can mean a gain of several tenths of a second per lap. Charles Leclerc was the first to test this configuration during both practice sessions, and his times demonstrated the package's potential. Lewis Hamilton, on the other hand, only fitted this new specification in the second session. This is no small detail. It speaks to a phased approach by the team, which likely wanted to directly compare both setups before deciding which would be the final one for qualifying and the race. But Ferrari didn't stop there. They also ran a second version of the rear wing, based on a design from last season, complemented by a completely new beam wing that hadn't been used so far in 2025. These types of variations allow the team to play with different levels of downforce depending on track conditions and the car's handling. The key word here is versatility. In addition to the rear elements, the team worked on the front and rear suspension. The extremely smooth surface of the Jeddah circuit allows for running at lower ride heights, something the SF25 needs to unlock its optimal performance. As a result, the engineers decided to stiffen the suspension. This improved the car's rotation in fast corners and changes of direction, but it also had consequences: less comfort in slow corners and greater demands on the rear tires. This balance between stiffness and adaptability was one of the biggest technical challenges of the weekend. Ferrari knew that the SF25's operating window is very narrow. If the car isn't at its perfect height, if it's not balanced between the axles, performance drops dramatically. Every millimeter counts. Every aerodynamic decision impacts the entire rest of the car. And behind all these modifications is a much broader objective. These aren't just solutions for Jeddah. They are covert tests of what could become Ferrari's base package for upcoming races. The team needs to gather data, understand how the SF25 responds to different load levels, and above all, identify how the new engines behave in conjunction with these aerodynamic configurations. In a Formula One where the margins are minimal, Ferrari isn't improvising. It's paving the way for building a sustainable competitive advantage. And if the results start to come in, these changes will be seen as the turning point of the season. What Ferrari did in Saudi Arabia isn't a conventional maneuver. It's a statement of principles, a gamble without a safety net. In a sport where every technical decision can define the course of an entire season, the Maranello team has chosen a bold path, and it did so very early. Changing the power unit in both cars almost completely, introducing an aerodynamic package adapted exclusively to the Jeddah circuit, and adjusting the suspension settings to the limits allowed by the regulations isn't just an attempt to win a race. It sends a clear message: Ferrari isn't willing to be left behind. This strategy represents a complete shift from previous seasons. For years, Ferrari was criticized for its conservative approach, for waiting too long before introducing improvements, for not reacting quickly when the car's performance fell short of expectations. But in 2025, the philosophy seems to have changed. Now, the team acts with speed, decisiveness, and a sense of urgency not seen since the days when they consistently fought for world titles. However, this new mentality also entails enormous risks. By using the second engine unit, turbocharger, and hybrid systems so early, Ferrari is compromising its flexibility for the rest of the championship. If a fault arises, if one of these new components doesn't perform as expected, penalties will be inevitable. And in a 23-race championship, losing positions due to technical penalties can mean the difference between fighting for the podium or missing out on the points. That's why this move is not only technical, but psychological. Ferrari is banking on momentum, on the domino effect that a good result in Jeddah can cause. They know that if they put together a dominant performance, if Leclerc or Hamilton take a strong podium, if the race pace confirms that the aerodynamic package and engine are working in harmony, the impact will be immediate. On the team's morale, on the press, on rivals, and above all, on the internal confidence that they are on the right path. But if the result doesn't come, the cost will be high. Because these kinds of radical decisions create expectations that cannot be ignored. If the car continues to be inconsistent, if Hamilton continues to struggle with the car, if Leclerc fails to transform his pace into victories, then the doubts will return. And this time more intense than ever. This isn't just a technical evolution. It's a moment of emotional and institutional inflection. Ferrari has been rewriting its season since the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. It could be the point where confidence is rebuilt, the place where a sequence of results is triggered that will put them in the fight for championships. Or it could be the start of an even steeper downward spiral. The difference between the two possibilities lies in the details. Whether the new engines can withstand the demands, whether the aerodynamic components generate the expected downforce, whether Hamilton finally manages to adapt. Everything is on the table. And now, each race will be an open judgment on the validity of this strategy. Ferrari has chosen not to wait, not to speculate. It has decided to act. And in Formula One, when that path is chosen, there are only two possible outcomes: resounding success or the hardest fall.